Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pipeline Podcast, episode 116. I'm your host today, Darren McClymans, and joining us today is the one, the amazing, the wonderful Dinosaur. Hello, Dino. How's it going?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I am good. Thank you for being here. Obviously, we did an episode, I think it was, I looked it up a couple of days ago. I think it was about 8 months ago.
Nice.
We talked about, I'm pretty sure it was like our favorite like television characters.
Yeah.
And that was a really fun one. Like that was a very long kind of like going through all of our favorite things.
That was awesome.
It was very fun. Yeah, I had a blast with that. And I was thinking like, all right, you were very good on the last episode. What do I want to have you back on for this episode? And you know what? We're kind of getting started on our MC retrospective here. Let's just pick a random one out of that lineup and throw it to you. And I feel like Ironman, like some of these early ones are kind of weird because I think like Iron Man 2, the Hulk, Iron Man 3 are ones that I think like I talked about this in the one I did for the Hulk, but it's like it's been so long. I think some people forget how they actually feel about it. Like I feel like they have their already established opinions like 10 years ago, and they're like, yeah, I just hate that movie. It was a bad movie. But it's like, let's actually like re-examine it. Let's actually look at it a little bit closer and see what our real thoughts on the movie are. But no, obviously, like I last time I really enjoyed hearing things that you were watching. I feel like you always kind of watch a lot of these really cool things or things maybe some people haven't heard of. Since the last time you were on the show, are there any cool things that you've watched or played or read that you would like to talk about?
Oh, you know what's funny is that last time I was on, I just discovered that Queen of Swords show.
Yep.
And I'm still watching it because it's 22 episodes and I refuse to binge it. And I'm at 2 or 3 episodes left. So I'm just going to say that one again because like it's so cheesy and it's so fun. And I love the early 2000s and I love that style of like the Whedon sort of like formula or whatever, like the Supernatural, Smallville, Buffy sort of era, like that. If you love those shows, just go find Queen. Okay, you know what sucks? I can't even plug it anymore. Got taken off of YouTube, but I YouTubed it before it, so now I have it. Anyways, that's one thing I can mention. The other thing, it's all gaming right now for me. Like gaming.
After the last time you were on, that left such an impression on us. We like after the episode aired, we were talking about like they mentioned this really obscure show we've never heard of, and like we respect just like plugging this show that I've never been on my radar, but I think that's really cool.
I know, and it's like think about how much media has just like slipped past us, and that you could have just fallen in love with that, like you didn't even know it was there.
Sure. No, 100%. I feel like we're in an era, and I talk about this on the show sometimes, but like we're entering a era of television or like a generation of people that are going to have these unfinished TV shows, right? Like
oh no.
Where it's just like all the new shows are either like revivals of the old shows or things that are just not finished, like they're canceled
Yeah.
before their time. So I think it's interesting kind of looking back at like some of the other shows for like our generation and being like, okay, what's in that cavern of stuff?
Uh-huh. It's
For sure.
fascinating. I mean, you think about like the budgets and like, oh, this was 12 months of someone's life, and they worked on this, and then nobody ever talks about it ever again.
I feel so bad for like the like Willow series on Disney Plus, where like
Yeah.
I didn't think that show was amazing. I thought
I
it
can
I actually
heavily critique Willow, and I still liked watching it quite a bit.
yeah no like or not like it. Like again, I didn't think it was great. I kind of thought it was kind of not great actually, but like I don't want it gone. Like that someday will become someone's cult classic show.
Yeah.
And now you've taken that away. There's so many shows that are very popular now that people would have deemed bad or like unwatchable at one point in time, and now that's their favorite thing.
And
So
we grew up with the Arrowverse, and it's funny to
yeah.
shit on the Arrowverse because we all watched it and we all
Yeah.
spent so many hours watching it, but they were given like so many second chances, not even second chances, like a billion chances to be like, okay, you guys had like a pretty good season of a show, like here's another one, here's another one, here's another one, and it's like to see something like Willow or even the Acolyte. I haven't finished the Acolyte. I've only seen like the first 3 episodes because I was supposed to watch it with my friend, but we just kind of started playing Warhammer Space Marine too much. You know, it's just so weird to me how they wouldn't want to like build off of a foundation. Anyways, like it defies logic, honestly.
Yeah. No, I mean I agree. I feel like there are no second chances in Hollywood nowadays where it's like, oh, people don't like this, okay, cancel it. It's like, no. Look at all the shows that would never be cult classics now if you would have Act 7 Season 1, right?
It seems to be a talking point that I've seen quite a bit is like, oh, all your favorite shows didn't do that well for the first season. Like Breaking Bad, or it's like the classic example. It's like, do you guys think that did crazy numbers in the first season?
Absolutely not. But well, like Parks and Recs is famous for having a horrible first season. Like that season's, from what I heard, bad. But it's one of the most popular sitcoms of all time, and so it wouldn't have got there if you wouldn't have let that sit for a while. Which, yeah, no, for sure. In terms of what I've been watching, I've been trying to get caught up on some 2024 movies this year, because I actually had a very bad year in terms of like watching new movies. I was like, I'll just watch this on streaming, and then it comes to streaming and I run out of time to watch it. But this week I watched Lisa Frankenstein that came out, I think it was like last February, and that was fun. I watched My Old Ass, which was a very weird movie, but that was also fun. I've been spending way too much time. I don't know if you've seen the show. I've been rewatching The Fosters, the like old ABC Family series. Which that's been pretty fun. That's been pretty fun, kind of like that show came out at like such a specific time in my like coming out
2013.
2013. Like, I mean, like I think it was mostly wrapped up when I was kind of going through my whole thing, but it's like I feel like one of the main characters kind of goes through their coming out the same time I was like, I don't know. So that's been kind of fun, kind of revisiting and being like, oh yeah, kind of like nostalgic for that era of my.
I don't think this show's ever been on my radar.
Really? Oh, it's really good. It's
I'll add it to my list.
If you're into like, listen, it's like ABC Family freeform drama. So it's a very drama, like it's a bit silly sometimes in terms, but I think when it hits really hard. Cool. It can be good. You said you were playing games and stuff, right? What's been the games that you've been playing?
Oh man, 2024 has been so good. Like I think to people, it's easy to say like, oh, like things are going downhill, but it's like this is one of the craziest years ever. Like we had like Helldivers has been good, and I need to preface that like there's a big difference for me in terms of like, oh, this game was a fantastic like single player experience versus like an excuse to hang out with my friends. And I think I've been given so many of those ones, like the Forest is an old game, but we've been playing a lot of that. We've been playing a lot of Helldivers. I've been doing GTA RP, Chivalry 2. We went back to Left 4 Dead 2 this year. Enshrouded came out this year. Tomb Raider Remastered is a single player game that I was playing this year. So hard, so fun. Serious Sam 2 is an older game that my friends were getting me to play. I'm very glad that I did. I still gotta play Suicide Squad with my friend in Iron. that game just like sits there. Anyways, Marvel Midnight Suns I started this year, but I had to reset my PC because it got busted, so I have to restart that one. But that's just in my Steam library, right? Like I started playing Stellar Blade, the really controversial. I don't even know what to call that game. Like it's like a Souls-like game with a very attractive main character that is like super controversial, but like I am fascinated with that stuff. By the way, like I don't have like a strong opinion about it. I think that I just like culture war stuff is interesting to me. I try not to get too connected to it, but that's a fantastic game in my opinion. The music is beautiful. I could just sit at the camps and just leave the game on and just listen to that music. It's so sick.
Amazing.
But yeah, tons of games. Space Marine 2, that's probably the best one of the year. That's my favorite one of the year, probably. Space Marine 2.
Ooh, interesting. Did you watch the Game Awards?
Yeah, I watched them last night with some friends, and I really enjoyed it. I think that I didn't care too much about like the actual awards part, but I was glad that Astrobot won. And generally, even though I haven't played it yet, I was glad Helldivers won a couple of awards. I think that they deserve some stuff. Balatro, it was just really funny because the guy wasn't there and he just kept winning, and I love that. I love when that kind of thing happens.
I remember Anthony, is it Tompkins, won a couple years ago at like the Oscars, and he was sleeping, like he wasn't there, he was sleeping. He wakes up, and he's like, "Oh, I guess I won best actor. That's cool, I guess."
What a gangster!
Amazing. But yeah, I think we're gonna jump into our first topic. It's been a huge news week. Like I feel like any one of these topics could be our main topic to talk about. So we're gonna be going through a couple of these. And like right before we went live today, there was a couple of new stuff that came out. So I was like, oh, okay, I didn't have time to make a graphic for it, but I guess we'll kind of swing it into some of the stuff. Biggest news of the week, without a doubt. Chris Evans has joined the cast of upcoming Avengers Doomsday in unknown role. Now, obviously, Avengers Doomsday, the upcoming Avengers movie, probably in terms of like size, probably one of the biggest upcoming movies, not only in the MCU, but I feel like in the industry. Like I feel like these Avengers movies, when they're leading up to it, it's always massive. This is something that I feel like has been talked about for a while. What are your thoughts on this? Are you?
I have such strong feelings about this.
Okay, go ahead then. Go for it.
I feel like I remember just waiting around for Infinity War for many, many years with my friends, speculating all sorts of things, and there was like a really special feeling about it. And it wasn't until like Age of Ultron came out that they were talking about like actor contracts, and I was like, oh, some of these people aren't going to stick around anymore after a certain point, so then we should expect like character deaths, and this is going to feel important, this is going to feel like it matters. And I remember Chris Evans tweeting out, and I was so mad at him. He was like, oh, I just filmed my final scene as Captain America. He put that out in a tweet, and I was like, at the time I was like, okay, for one, that's cool because that means this is going to feel important. But on the second hand, I'm like, bro, why are you tweeting this? We don't need to be told that you're filming your last Captain America scene like before Endgame comes out. So like historically, I've already like mourned the loss of these character portrayals, and it was fantastic to see him again as the Human Torch. That meant like so much to me. But it just bothers me like how it always felt like Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson leaving had more to do with Robert Downey Jr. leaving and his pedigree and his legacy and like his epicness and the love for people have for him. Like him leaving was like, oh yeah, if Downey is leaving, like we should go too. Like let's go out with him. Right. So it feels like, okay, he's coming back and Scarlett Johansson is producing something and potentially coming back in something. I don't mind like each of these projects. Like to be honest with you, like I think all of this does sound really cool. And I don't know who Chris Evans is going to be. He could be the Human Torch. He could be Captain America with the Infinity Stones. He could be just wrapping up, returning the Infinity Stones. That could be the Cap that we see. Like that's the most likely scenario. And you know, for Secret Wars, it would be really cool to see him there. I mean, I can't deny that, but I could be mistaken. But the Human Torch was in the Secret Wars comic in the 80s, wasn't he? I remember it was the Fantastic Four members, but one of them wasn't there. I don't remember if it was the Human Torch that was or was not there or not, but it's weird because Secret Wars has a bunch of like remix versions of characters. War Machine is Iron Man in that book, and I don't mind just having Sam Wilson Captain America. Like it's weird. Like I don't think we need this. Is how I feel about it, but it's still really cool.
Yeah. I think like okay, so like the Robert Downey announcement came a couple months ago, and I have strong opinions on that. I was like, I don't love that, to be honest, like that whole situation. But like when that was announced, I was like, so Chris Evans will be announced. ScarJo
you called it. I wouldn't have predicted that.
I feel like once you open that can of worms, it's just like everything's up in the open. Like you could just bring back literally anyone at that point. I think my big issue, because obviously like I've defended it a little bit. I've said like, to me this seems like the end of the current era of the MCU. Like I feel like Secret Wars is all about kind of having a new start, kind of resetting some things, recasting people if you want for like a new chapter of Marvel. So I kind of think that's what they're doing. So like I feel like I don't have a problem with some of these actors returning if it is the final era of this interpretation of some of these characters. I just wish there was another Avengers movie in between Endgame and Doomsday, because I think saying goodbye to these characters in Avengers 4 than just to say hello to them in Avengers 5 is kind of rough to me. Like I was really excited, and we can talk about this a little bit more in a second, but like Avengers 5 to me, what I was most looking forward to is all these characters who've been building up for the last 5 years to now get to work together, and it's like maybe that still will be the case, but I feel like I don't know, I wanted something a little bit smaller, I guess, for Avengers 5.
I keep going back to 2019, and I keep thinking about what Kevin Feige said originally, which was we're not going back to Avengers. We're not going to go back to that title. The plan is to go small for the next team up and smaller stakes. And it's a shame that like everything has played out the way it has behind the scenes, because I think that had things worked out, they would have been more confident in doing something like that. But this is all just a lack of confidence to me. And then the moves that they are making it feels like that Kingpin line. When he says this to Ray Nadeem, he's like, "Your desperation diminishes you, Nadeem." Like that's literally what I think of when I think of these types of decisions, because it just shows a lack of confidence in the characters that they have. Like, are they not confident the chemistry between like Moon Knight and Kamala Khan and Matt Murdock, and like they're lucky to have all these Defenders characters back. Like you're bringing Cap back, but like there's a ton of people who want to see Luke Cage back. Like I know that's not very many people to be, by the way, like compared to like the Chris Evans Captain America fans, but they have a lot to work with. That's the stranger part of it. They have so much material to work with, and they're retreading old ground. So it is like a tough pill to swallow. Like I would identify myself as like a franchise loving shill. I'm an easy to please person, but this feels like slop to me. Like the Doomsday stuff, but Chris Evans on his own and his characters that he's played are likable enough. Like he can either be like this comedic foil as the Human Torch, or he could just be this. We can get to see the strong leader Steve Rogers again. But then I'm wondering about Sam Wilson. It's like, why not give him his moment? Yeah. So I agree with you 100%. There should have been like a smaller team up movie, whether it was called Avengers or not. It should have happened. It should have featured everybody that we met in the last few years. And they could have wrapped up like the Eternal storyline in that movie. Like they could have, that movie could have been anything. Like, and it could have just been about them meeting each other. Because again, I hate to bring it up, but the Arrowverse like gives us like a blueprint for all of this stuff. Like they could have just like had them all meet like for like an hour-long show on Disney Plus. You know what I mean? Like it could have been anything just to like, give us that feeling of Avengers. Like it's 2012 is Avengers, and then we get a new one 3 years after that, and then we get a new one 2 years after that, and then we get another one a year after that. So it always felt like it's not about the Avengers brand. It's just about like bringing them together every few years and acknowledging like, look at what we built. And I think that's like that's what fans like. Fans like overinflate the idea of, oh, it doesn't feel like there's a plan. Like, it does feel like there's a plan. Like, I don't agree with this notion. Like, oh, it feels like everything's disconnected. There's no plan. It's like, no, that's MCU. Like, that's just
Yeah.
MCU. It's
And
the problem is they haven't like brought it all together yet. Like,
yeah, and that was the whole point of Phase 4. That's what they told us, and that's what we told them we wanted. You know, we told them we want more projects, we want more characters, we want to expand this world. So Phase 4 was about, okay, we're introducing an entire new slate of characters. The issue is we ran into COVID, we ran into a writer's strike, and we lost the main villain of the franchise. Like, they were out, so they were like, so every 2 years was them being like, okay, we've rebuilt, oh no, tear it down, we rebuilt, oh wait, tear it down. So like, they never, very unlucky. And obviously everybody is very unlucky, but like, this is kind of the first time where you have this entire universe where it's like, okay, this can't come out until this comes out, and this can't come out until this comes out. And when you film like 10 things in advance, and everyone's like, hey, we don't like this, they can't be like, well, we already have all this stuff filmed. Sorry,
now
guys.
This thing has to come out before this thing, so we have to shoot it. And like, I think that was Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, like, completely reshot because of scheduling. Like, insane.
Yeah.
And no Shang-Chi sequel. Like, we could like speak so deeply on like what we want and what we haven't gotten, but you know, I'm always someone who I am easy to please, and like I'm not like super negative about this stuff, but like generally, like if you really had to put me into a corner here, I would say, yeah, they do feel desperate right now.
Mm-hmm. I want to pull up this, just like the lineup that we got the other day for Avengers 5, and obviously it goes into what we were kind of saying already.
Ooh,
but like,
exciting.
Like this lineup,
the thing.
It's not a. So okay, so we have Chris Evans, Anthony Mackie, Robert Downey. Let's start with those three. Yeah, like. That makes sense, right? So Robert Downey.
Are they going to share the shield, or are we going to have two shields? Like, you know what I mean? That's what I mean.
Yeah. If he's even playing in Captain America, like maybe he's Human Torch. I've heard the theory going around. Maybe he's like Hydra Cap. So he's maybe a villain of the movie.
I don't think I could handle like Crisis on Earth X. Like, I hate to do this. I feel like that person. I did this last time I was here. Yeah. And I'm not someone that does this in casual conversation. But it's so Arrowverse coded.
Oh, I'm doing that every episode. Don't you even worry. That's
it's Crisis on Earth X mixed with Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like, that's what Marvel Secret Wars is going to be.
Yeah. I will say Anthony Mackie already being on this call sheet makes me happy. Because that makes me think that he is planned to be the leader of the movie. Or like the leader of the Avengers. That makes me happy. That he's like, there's not a lot of Phase 4, Phase 5 centered characters, but he's here, so that makes me happy. Doctor Strange also makes sense. I would be shocked if he's not like the co-lead of that movie. Like, if it's like, I could see like Anthony Mackie, Doctor Strange, Tom Holland, and then maybe the Fantastic Four people. So like maybe either Mr. Fantastic or Invisible Woman. Yeah, Sue. Yeah, like I could see those four kind of being the main ones. Are we shocked about Tom Holland at all?
Well, I think that it should also be acknowledged, like, how many articles we've seen in the past 3 or 4 years of him being the main character of this movie. Yeah. And, like, we've seen so many of those articles, and we've also seen, like they've introduced the anchor beam in Deadpool, which is obviously, like, as a concept, that, like, if you could pick it apart and it doesn't really make sense, that's fine. That's just a side thing that I'm just acknowledging. Yeah. I think the anchor beam idea in regards to Tom Holland is really sweet. I like the idea that he's like the most important character. Yeah. And I'm wondering what that means, like, in terms of screen time and importance. Like, with Doctor Strange, I really thought we were going to get his third film before this, but it looks like we're not. We're going to... I like that to me signals, like, okay, is Charlize Theron going to have a big role in Secret Wars then? And then that will lead to Doctor Strange 3. And then with Tom Holland's situation, it's like, how much screen time is he going to have compared to Anthony Mackie? So it's really fascinating. And then there's the Doctor Doom versus Mr. Fantastic fans from the comics. People like want to see that represented. And I don't think that is really. I think that it's probably going to be, instead of Pedro Pascal versus RDJ, it's probably going to be Tom Holland versus RDJ. And I don't know if I like that.
I'm also curious because his schedule is packed, because he's going to have to film Spider-Man 4, which comes out the year before, this and Secret Wars, which I'm assuming is going to be a back-to-back filming. Not to mention his Quentin Tarantino movie that he recently booked. Not to mention he just started his he started his own production company yesterday, which is going to be 3 films that they're working on. Man is booked and busy. Man is keeping it real, and I mean, and I respect it, especially someone who, like, I don't know if you saw that tweet that went around about a month ago, being like, "Oh, Tom Holland's washed. He's only ever played Spider-Man," and then instantly after, he's booked like 50 things.
Thank God.
Oh, he's fantastic. Like, I'm so excited for him to finally make his mark. And all
I've seen a lot of his movies that like get low critic ratings.
Yeah,
and like I've seen those movies, like Devil of All Time. And,
yeah.
That he's never been the reason those movies are bad. Like,
no,
and those movies aren't even overtly like, oh, it's the worst movie of all time. It's
right.
like they're like 50-60% critic
just
rated.
A little
movies,
unlucky. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Fantastic Four cast also makes sense here. And then Thunderbolts as well. And I think it's funny that they said, like, to be announced members, because I do think members will die in that movie. So I don't think they want to say.
Fun. Very fun.
But I mean, I would assume, like, Sebastian Stan, probably Red Guardian, probably Yelena would probably be the 3 I'd throw in here. I think those make the most sense to me.
I think it's cool to see them put all 4 Fantastic Four members, but I'm mostly thinking about The Thing, because he has a specific sort of role in Secret Wars where, like, he turns back to his regular self, and he kind of has not like a crisis of conscience, but, like, you know, he's in his own head because of it, I guess.
Yeah. It's also kind of fun that we're going to have Spider-Man and Human Torch in the same project, because I feel like people have been wanting to see that lineup for a while. Okay, I also want to share these 2 things, and again, I don't want to spend too much time on these, because, like, we have some things to get there, but we had some breaking news in terms of, like, the Captain America stuff. I'm not sure if you've seen these. Hold on, let me pull up my screen here really quickly.
Very concerned. Oh, I saw this morning.
Yeah, Haley Atwell has been cast as Peggy Carter in Avengers Doomsday. Now, I'll be honest, I think I'm more excited about this than either the Downey return or the Chris Evans return, which is weird to say, but, like, I feel like that's just because I binged the Agent Carter series, I think it was last year. I was, like, rewatching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I kind of threw Agent Carter in my list.
Hell yeah.
Because kind of, like, stuff we did in the final season, I was like, yeah, I kind of want to I finally want to watch the show. I love the show. I think it's such an underrated series. What are your thoughts on this? Are you... Again, this is a little random.
I love Agent Carter, the show.
Yeah.
It's like one of the only things I've rewatched, like, out of all of the MCU shows, like the old guard shows. It's one of the only things in the MCU that's made me cry. I think in the 2nd season, there's like a scene between Jarvis and Peggy in the desert. No spoilers. There's some fantastic stuff in there, and you know, we got that What If episode where they're in the 80s. I don't know if you've seen that episode.
Yeah.
There was so much potential for that show in terms of bringing in, like, a younger Hank Pym or a different Black Panther, or like there's just so much that they could have done, like, in that on those decades, you know. And
yeah, I mean, just the idea of, like, obviously you would have had to just do some time jumps, but I wanted to see them, like, Howard and Peggy form S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, I think that's kind of the thing you're kind of waiting for, is, like, that's such a cool thing. And again, I don't know how exactly, because they were, like, 12 years behind, I think, at the start of the show, so you would have had to do some time jumps, but it would have been cool.
And I think the reason why we would feel more into this than the other returns is because it feels like there's more unfinished business here.
Yes, 100%.
It feels like there's like a reason for fans to want this, but then I also see a side of the fandom that is, like, very much like, oh, this is the industry plant character. Like, they keep pushing her super hard, and it's like that is coming from a part of the fan base that doesn't care about this character. And I got to give Marvel props for, like, from the very beginning, they knew that they, like, struck gold with Haley Atwell.
She's really good, yeah.
And they've given her, like, so much because of that. You know, I don't think it has to do with, like, anything other than just how good the actress is. And that's why she's been awarded so much. Like, it was the one shot, and then it's her show, appearances, like, all across the MCU.
Right.
So, you know, it's just more love towards that portrayal. And we gotta expect a chance of seeing Captain Carter again, because it's probably going to be Captain Carter, which is hilarious because you're going to have Chris Evans potentially holding a shield, Anthony Mackie potentially holding a shield, and then you have Haley Atwell potentially holding a shield as well. And if I'm Haley Atwell, I'm thinking to myself, okay, cool, I got to be my own Captain America in an animated show, but then they killed me on screen gruesomely. So it's like, if they're bringing me back again for another biggest movie of all time, like, I don't think it's going to be for like a meaningless character death. Or not meaningless, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm really wondering, like, okay, because I never felt like, oh, that they disrespected her by killing her off like that. Like, but I do know that it's like, okay, you introduced her as Captain Carter, and then the first time we see her, she dies. Like, that's a rough, timeline of events for that version of that character. So it makes me really wonder, like, if it's Captain Carter, then she might be there for the whole movie, or maybe she'll get like a little cool fight scene, or to me it's nothing more than like, it's just a last chance to give some love to this character, I think, because maybe we never see her again after that. Maybe as you said, it's a reset of the universe. Like, maybe this is our last chance to show love to some of these characters. Like, there's a part of us that is like really cynical about like these actor returns, but I also think like this might be the last opportunity for them to like to throw a really big party. Like,
I agree. I 100% agree. And then we also had this thing, which I thought was kind of interesting. Chris Evans was intentionally planned to return as Captain America in a new standalone film alongside Haley Atwell. A story for that film couldn't be nailed down. I don't believe, like, I would 100% believe this. Like, there was all those rumors all those years ago where like, oh, they'll make a movie about him returning the stones and blah blah blah. What I will say, I don't love this method of filmmaking, because this to me proves that they were like, oh, we want a movie that makes money with Captain America coming back, where it's like, you're not making that movie because you have a story to tell with those characters. You're making a movie because you know that will make money, which I understand that's the industry. I understand you want to make money, but also it's like, I don't like that method in terms of when you go into a universe like this.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? Like,
I think
like, is
James
this
Gunn made a tweet, I think, or it was like an Instagram comment just talking about like, oh, we're not going to greenlight films based off of like a pitch. Like, we're going to make sure we have a script line down. And that's like the most frustrating thing about Phase 4 and 5 is that like, we know which projects were like that and which of them weren't. And like, we know which of the ones that haven't released yet that are still in that state, like particularly like Blade or even Armor Wars at this point, like they knew exactly what you just said. They knew that this character is popular, they can print money, so let's just greenlight it, and then everything else will fall into place afterwards. Right. And I think with this idea in particular, I can understand them having a lot of faith in this idea.
Yeah.
And it's something that I probably would have wanted personally, only because I think that he did have another movie in him, like as a character.
Yeah.
And whether or not it would have taken place, like, I would have been fine with a Civil War era sequel, like something before Infinity War with them on the run.
Sure.
I would have been fine with them in the past as well. Like, I would have been funny if we found out that he didn't return the stones. Like, he just lived with Peggy for a long time and then just put it off for like 10 years. And then it was like, okay, I got to go do this thing. Do you want to come with me? And then it was like a movie like that. Like, that would have been kind of fun. But then it's also, we got to get into like the weird timey-wimey stuff. Jeremy Bearimy. What's going on with like where he even is, right? Like, he's like, is he gonna, like, would it have been like, oh, we got to save the past, like, got to save the future because we're in the past, but also like, this is a different timeline, so like, this is its own timeline that we're saving, so maybe the audience doesn't care about this timeline as much because that's what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did a little bit by the end of its show, was like they saved another timeline that wasn't the main one. So I think that it's tough to like nail down exactly what this would have been, because it's exactly as you said. It wasn't anything. It was It was barely a plan.
Right, just like an idea on a piece of paper, like, hey, we could make another $1 billion if we make this movie or whatever. Yeah, I do wonder if they're going.
They should have done it the other way around, where Falcon and the Winter Soldier should have been a movie or something, and then like this should have been like a series, like a Captain America little bookends, little mini series to end it all off. Or I'm still someone who says that Old Man Cap had staying power. And like Old Man Steve Rogers had a lot of staying power. He had storylines with Deadpool. He had storylines with She-Hulk. He had storylines with Matt Murdock. He could have been there for Sam. He could have been there for any character in a mentorship role, a comedic role. And it sucks. Like that's another thing that makes me bad about the Downey thing, is because it feels a lot like, oh, they ended Cap because Iron Man was ending. But it's like Steve Rogers as an old man, like, that had a lot of staying power in my mind, and I feel like the only fan who like talks about that. Like, I never see people say that, and I'm like, I really think that we lost like something special there. So,
well, here's my question then. Like, Captain America 4 had a lot of reshoots. There's a lot of stuff there. You think there's a chance we get a Chris Evans cameo in Captain America 4 as like?
I mean, I would want it. I would really, really want it. I'm afraid they're just going to kill him. I'm afraid it's just going to be like Civil War, where we don't get Peggy in the movie. It's just Peggy dies.
Right.
I think that's exactly what's going to happen, honestly.
Yeah, it's weird because they've been very, very vague about where he is. Like, I feel like
that we read those jokes.
Yeah, like, he's up in space or he's blah, blah, blah. But, like, they refuse to elaborate on where Cap is. Like, what is he up to? You know, is he in a nursing home somewhere? Like what's going on with him? So I think that's all very funny. Speaking of things being old and in a nursing home, I want to bring up our next story here.
Amazing segue.
Thank you. Sony's Marvel Spider-Man universe
will
come to an end with Kraven.
Even better segue than I thought.
Speaking of things that are dead. I mean, listen, this, like it or not, this is the end of an era. Listen, I've talked about this universe so much on the show this year. We did.
What if I told you I have bad news for you?
Oh, what's your bad news?
There's no way that this universe is over, because we're still getting the Nicolas Cage Spider-Man noir show. Yeah. And that to me is spunk. That's still a Spider-Man universe extended, whatever the name is. So
but technically
we're still in this still. We're still in the
apparently that's like a separate little universe. Like, it seems like it's gonna be more of like an Elseworlds story. That's fair.
Well, I never assumed that Madam Web and Venom and Kraven and Morbius were the same universe. Yeah. Were they?
Yeah, I mean, because we had the post-credit scene for Morbius where we bring in Venom and we have all these things. Apparently, they were supposed to be in the same universe, although Madam Web had a thing where it's like, oh, we're actually separate or whatever. But listen,
so confusing.
It's really confusing. And listen, like, this has been easily the weirdest like cinematic universe in a history of all cinematic universes.
I don't even want to call it a cinematic universe.
It's not. It
doesn't even deserve the definition.
No. I mean, I haven't seen Kraven yet. I'll probably go tomorrow. Yeah. But like, I don't know if I really want to at this point. Like, listen, like this universe has done me dirty every time, because every time they announce one of these, like every time I get a new trailer, I was like, you know what, guys, let's give it a chance. Maybe this time has to be the time where they make
it's a good mentality.
They have to, like, and I think Madam Web killed me a little bit, because I honestly I put myself out there so much. I was like, screw it, this movie's gonna be great. Screw it. I'm putting all my cards in that ship.
I love that. I love that amount of faith.
that was rough. I was like, you know what? I can't do that again. I can't. I mean, are you sad at all about this? Are you happy that
I was one of those kids in high school? Like, I graduated in 2015. I remember for 3 or 4 years of high school, sitting around, like, looking up article after article after article about, like, how does Spider-Man get in the MCU, watching YouTube videos, taught people explaining the rights issues. Like, I was that kind of teenager that was, like, obsessed with that. So when we got the news of the deal, it was, like, new territory. And it was like, okay, what are they doing? So these guys make a movie with this character, but they don't profit off of it. And then these guys can use that character, but then the other company doesn't profit off of it at all. And then as the years went on, we learned more. And then it's like, okay, these guys are allowed to use Peter Parker, but they're not allowed to use anyone else. And these guys aren't allowed to use Peter Parker, but they can use anyone else they want.
Yeah.
And it's like, historically, I think it was the dumbest deal for Sony. Still a good deal for Marvel, I think. And like, that is like, to me, it's always just gonna, I'm always gonna perceive it as a monkey's paw. I'm not gonna perceive this at all as like art. I know that's like really harsh to say, because like people worked on this stuff. Tom Hardy obviously really cared about his portrayal of Venom. God bless him for like making it successsul. Even though I'm not like the biggest fan of it, like he made it work and people care about that portrayal. So props to him. I can't really perceive this as anything like honest, because even with Amazing Spider-Man 1, the film was only made to keep the rights to Spider-Man. They needed to make that film and get it in production within a year, because if they didn't release a film by 2012, the rights automatically legally go back to Marvel. So part of it is like, why do you think like Morbius and Kraven and these Venom sequels and Madam Web, why do you think they came out at a time while we're sitting around waiting for the next Spider-Man film?
Yeah.
It's because they just are putting out crap to keep the rights. So like, it's really hard for me to respect these films, and it's really hard for me to like care about them. I'm just looking forward to whatever the next deal is. Can we get a Spider-Man cameo on the Daredevil show? Can you get him on Disney Plus? Like why don't you just make that happen for us? Like why don't, like, if you guys could have figured out keeping Tom Holland after 2019, when they had that moment where Tom Holland did the drunk phone call with Bob Iger, like if you guys can make that like work, like you guys can give us more Spider-Man appearances in the MCU, and like I'm excited about the future. Like I'm less so like, oh man, Kraven was bad. Like no, like there's no expectation. Like
I think like I actually think they're in a very good opportunity right now with like the 3 upcoming Spider-Man stuff they have announced, which is Spider-Man 4, which I think obviously makes sense to keep doing what they're doing in the MCU. That works. I think Beyond the Spider-Verse, also great. And I think the Nicolas Cage Spider-Man Noir show is a fantastic step into the future. That's what I want more of.
It's like so cool.
And I think Spider-Verse has allowed them the perfect opportunity to do that, to pitch these new Spider-Man ideas to the general public. And then either, I don't know if you want to do it a animated direct spinoff, or you want to do it more like Spider-Man Noir, where like Beyond the Spider-Verse and, you know, like Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, that's just a pitching ground for new movies. You could literally pick any one of these characters and be like, give them their own feature-length movie. Like, they could totally have their own movie. Like, really have fun with that. I'd love a Spider-Gwen movie. I'd watch a Spider-Man movie. I'd watch, you know, all these things you could 100% do. I'm curious what the future looks. I will not miss this universe. I actually kind of like I feel like this year's been a really good year for like comic book stuff, and then it's like, it's been pretty good. And then these 3 movies and Joker 2, I kind of like the holding back for everything, I feel.
There's no way you just said that Madam Web and Venom 3 and Kraven all came out this year.
All this year, which is crazy.
That's insane.
One MCU movie as well. There was 1 MCU movie and 3 Sonyverse movies, which is crazy.
If somebody told me that like in the year 2014 when we got 3 MCU movies, that like that's what we were in store, and 1 Sony movie in 2014, like that's the complete opposite of 2014. 2024 is the complete opposite of 2014. That's insane.
Technically, we didn't get an MCU movie in 2024 because Deadpool and Wolverine, while technically MCU, it's part of the Fox world for like 99% of the movie. So like,
so true.
Hey Noah, how's it going, buddy? How's it going?
That's super wild.
All right, let's move on to our next thing here. Again, it's been a crazy news week. Let's talk about this one. Let's dive into some Disney stuff here. Oh boy, everyone's. Speaking of anti-art, new live-action Django film is in the works for Disney. If I had a nickel for every time I talked about a new live-action Disney movie on this channel, I'd be I'd at least have $5.
This feels like dangerous waters for them because there's already that Zachary Levi stuff that's been happening, and like they're just invoking that more. They're just invoking it. Like I feel like as soon as they cast these actors, people are just going to talk about the old one, and people are going to talk about their fondness for the old one, and that's all this really is like a revamp. And like I have a very simple response to discussions about these live action remakes, which is like pointing out live action content that I'm pretty sure no one has seen. So if anyone is listening to this and is thinking like, I am wanting to sit down and watch a Disney live action remake, go watch Gallivant. Just go sit down and watch ABC's Disney's Gallivant. Don't watch one of these remakes. Just watch something you haven't seen before. Watch something that is Disney, that's a musical, that's lovey-dovey, that's a princess, that's beautiful, and a super cool action hero that's hot. Like, just enjoy it. Like, don't give your money to this. It's like feels like a protest me saying that, but like I have to.
No, I know. I get it. I mean, I have to do what I do, and I have to try and play devil's advocate a little bit and try to be like, okay, is there any worth in this? And you know what? I will do the same thing I do when every one of these are announced. There is room to make an original movie here, right?
Yeah.
Like Rapunzel is a character. It is a book. It is a story on its own. There are places where you can make something really fun and original. I actually really liked the like Little Mermaid one, because what I thought they did very well is like, yes, they are telling a similar story. They add so many new elements to that story. I think they actually expand on the world in some really, really cool ways. And a couple of these have also done this.
Yeah, I've never really disliked any of them. Like I like the Cinderella one, actually.
Sure.
Simple.
Right. I like you know what though? Like what I want from these is like I think what Mufasa's doing right now, where it's like if that movie is good, if it's bad, whatever. I already respect that movie more than the 2019 Lion King movie because they're at least telling a new story, right?
Yeah.
It's based on an IP, but they are telling an original story. Same thing with like Cruella. Same thing with Maleficent. The current rumor for like the Hercules movie, the current rumor, obviously no confirmation, it's going to be a Hades movie instead of a Hercules movie. I'm like, all right, I would 100% love to see that. Give me that play on the lore than just doing the exact same movie again. But I think Tangled is too popular. I think like all the popular ones are like, yeah, let's make the same movie again so people won't be mad at us. But like, I don't know. We'll see. I'm not completely against it. I do think I am just tired though. Like I think I would be more open to these movies if there was less of them. Like if it was just every 2 or 3 years they did one, I'd be like, okay, cool, whatever. Like I think Lilo and Stitch next year, I think could be cool because there's a lot of ways you can expand on that. If you're just like, okay, there's a little one, but it's
a
like
lot of our stories that we love are remakes. Like these aren't original stories. These were animated films based off of older stories. So then there's a beautiful thing of passing on the torch and, as you said, expanding, telling a new story, making a new movie out of it. So I want to be hopeful. Like, I loved back in the day, that era, like Mandy Moore and Zachary Levi, when people liked Zachary Levi. Like that's like a very specific part of like an era of Hollywood. I don't remember the year it came out. Was it the 2000s?
Was it a late? It was 2010.
Oh, that's messed up. Anyways,
14 years old.
So I just think about like I'm excited to see who they cast predominantly. Like I'm more excited to see who they cast. Yeah. I'm excited to see what it looks like. And I'm excited to see who plays like the evil mother, stepmom, or whatever. Like that's gonna be a really fun thing about it.
I want Catherine Hahn, I think, to play Mother. I think that'd be a really good casting.
That would be
maybe typecast a little bit, but you know what?
Yeah.
I think
that's a meme, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, the meme is like animated Agatha is what she is. Okay. that's what animated Agatha would look like.
Yeah. There's also, I think, a thing right now for me where it's like, I don't think Tangled is an old enough IP where it's like you couldn't just do Tangled 2. Like I know, and obviously, I guess like the Zachary Levi thing might be a bit of a problem now, but like I think Moana 2 has made a case of like, especially with Moana 2 and the live action one at the same time, that makes me be like, why don't you just make a sequel instead of doing a reboot? Like, I think the brand is still recognizable enough that you could still do this. I mean, Incredibles was what, like wasn't it like a 10-year gap in between 1 and 2? Now, I do know there was the series that had come out, and that was very popular, and I wouldn't want to have to mess with the lore of that show,
Yeah.
but I think there's ways that you could do it.
It's also weird that it wasn't just like announced as another Rapunzel adaptation. Like they're not even, they're just being so, they're telegraphing their moves now. They're like, it would have been really exciting if they were like, we're doing a live action Rapunzel story, and then when we get the trailer, we see that it's like Tangled coded or whatever. And I don't know. It's like, maybe I'm like nitpicking here by like mentioning that, but I don't know. Like I do think of that part of it as well, where there was no Rapunzel animated story before Tangled, was there? Like from Disney, like it was just a story in a book that people knew. Because I knew the story of Rapunzel as a little kid, which is also really weird if you really think about it. Like, how did I even I don't remember like when I first heard the story of Rapunzel, but I knew the story. And so when Tangled came out, like everyone knew what that story was. Like wasn't like the pop, like our generation's like introduction to that pop culture. And like I think the reason I'm acknowledging that is because like they didn't make Rapunzel. You know what I mean? Like Rapunzel is like Rapunzel. So them saying we are adapting Tangled into live action feels really weird to me in that sense.
Right.
Like they could like start with a better foot, which is like we're not bringing back something for like they could come across like more like artistic and like loving with the material, but it's like we're just doing Tangled again. Like it's not like we're bringing Rapunzel back for a new generation. It's like, no, we already did that 10 years ago, 14 years ago, so we're just gonna do that again.
Right.
So no, and that's me being really nitpicky, by the way, like about them announcing it like this.
Yeah, no, but like I 100% agree. Like these movies were based on the source material, and I could be like, okay, cool, pick another aspect of the source material to adapt. Like we did Peter Pan a couple years ago. Peter Pan's a big story. There's a lot of different ways you can adapt that character. It's like, no, we just did it the same way we did the last time. It's like, okay, I guess so. Like at one point in time, I don't think it's still happening, but before they announced a live action Frozen, which I'm not sure if that's still happening, they had announced a live action Snow Queen adaptation. I was like, okay, that's a really cool way to go about it. Like, let's adapt the thing that Frozen was based on. That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
But yeah,
get a new tone, get a new take, get a new like flavor of it.
Right.
What do you think of the How to Train Your Dragon thing? Because this is kind of like a similar situation where, but that's really cool because it has the same director. But then on the other hand, I'm like, I have seen like many people on Twitter react negatively to it, and I can't bring myself to like fully disagree with the people pointing out like what are we doing here? Like we're literally just making the same thing again.
You know, yeah, I'm concerned. I mean, How to Train Your Dragon 1 and 2 are some of my favorite films of all time. Like those are easily some of my favorites of all time. But I mean, I was excited. I mean, I excited is a strong word, but I was very curious. Like, I think with the original director coming back, that's very interesting. He had said at one point in time, he's here to tell a new story based on all this. I was like, okay, cool. Maybe they're adapting the books to How to Train Your Dragon. Like, that's a completely different story. I was okay. And then apparently the early screenings for some of it said, yeah, it's just kind of the same movie again. And then he had made the comment that was basically like, I wasn't sure about hopping on, but they said if I didn't do it, someone else would, and he wanted to be there to do it right. I was like, I don't like that. I don't like that it's just like ultimative, being like, well, if you don't do it, we'll get some guy who doesn't care about it. Like that seems anti-art.
It's like the Matrix.
Well. Yeah, I actually thought the trailer was really, really good, and like everyone's like, oh my gosh, this one looks better, this one looks good. And I was like, yeah, because it looks exactly like a movie that you already love. Like, of course it looks good. So I don't know.
It's visually exactly the same.
Yeah, it looks like the same movie. Like it's a trailer for a movie that I love. Of course, I am gonna love it. I don't know. I'm excited. It comes out my like birthday month, so that will probably add to some of the hype of it. But
it'll be a nice nostalgia blast.
Yeah, I hope it's good. I hope they do some new elements. Like there's some things that you can kind of explore on in that world. I think in a fun way. And not to get way off track because we have one more news story here, but like I think they very clearly wanted to do more in the How to Train Your Dragon world, and I think they kind of kicked themselves in the butt with how they ended it, which I'm glad they ended it the way they did. I think that's a gorgeous ending, but there's not a lot of room for like a How to Train Your Dragon 4, and then there's not a lot of room for like a prequel, right? Because you could do a prequel, but not under like the PG rating. It would have to be like a rated R kind of thing. So it's like, what else do you do? Oh, a live action movie. Okay, let's do that. Let's do what Disney's doing. So I don't know.
Oh yeah, it is Paramount, isn't it? Or is it? I don't
It's
know.
Universal, I think.
Universal.
I mean, like it's like I think it's under DreamWorks, but I think that's owned
Okay.
by Universal. If I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
and you know the only reason I bring it up is because I do think that there's a potential this Tangled situation is going to be like very similar. Like we're going to see set photos and a trailer, and it's going to feel like the exact same conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm curious how I think because yeah, I mean we've cracked open a thing where it's like before we were only rebooting things from like 20 years past or 30 or 40 years past. But I think starting next year, we have How to Train Dragon, we have Lilo and Stitch, we have Moana, we have Tangled. Now everything we grew up on is now on the table. So it's like,
Big
oh,
yikes.
okay. Yeah. This is, I don't know. Which again, like if there's a story you have worth telling, do it. Like if you're telling a new story, if there's a reason, that's always been my pitch, right? If you have something new to tell in your reboot, then go for it. I'm here for it. But if you're just doing it to do it because you know it'll make money, that's where I don't like it. That's where I'm not a huge fan of it.
Imagine like working on something as your dream project for many years, storyboarding it, animating it, and then doing it again in live action. Like
yeah.
It's hard for me to like, because I've never been in that position. But it's still hard for me to imagine like how is he going to keep like the same spark and inspiration, and how is he going to avoid like having those moments of like just retreading the same ground exactly without like
Deja vu.
without doing it in like a dull way, like. I don't know. It's so strange. Like, imagine like you made a piece of art that was your best piece of art, and you came back 2 years later to do it again in a new art style. Like, I think a lot of people can imagine that, and it's like, in most cases, you would just make something new, or just go and visit the old piece of art that you made originally, and enjoy it. So it's very strange.
Very strange for sure.
But the casting of Tangled, that is what I'm most excited about. I'll say.
I hope both of them. Okay, that's another thing really, really quickly that I'm curious about are the ages of these characters, because they're slightly in the anime. They're not too bad, but slightly controversial. Where Rapunzel's 18, Flynn is 23. Do you think they're going to change that? Do you think they'll make either her older or him younger?
I'm hoping they'll both be the perfect age of 23, 22 or something.
Yeah, just like meet in the middle. Yeah, for sure. And like. Honestly, though, like I actually wouldn't mind if they make Flynn younger, just because I do think like a little bit of Rapunzel's thing is that she is so naive and like she doesn't know the world at all. So I do think like I think making her 18 makes a lot of sense, right? Because she's kind of like,
and then having a similar age, like 19-year-old guy, kind of showing her like the world that she hasn't seen.
Right. Yeah. No. I could see that for sure. Like making him 19, her 18, I think might be a perfect blend or whatever. Or maybe her 19, him 20 potentially. Like I could maybe see that working. Yeah. I don't know. Okay. One final news story here. This, like as we're talking, new things are kind of coming out about this as we speak. So this headline I wrote here is a little slightly out of date. Mike Flanagan is writing a Clayface movie for DC, rumored to be filmed in 2025. Now, obviously, we have a little bit of an update on this that came out about 2 hours ago at this point. Let's just talk about this as like a hypothetical first, and then we can dive into whatever that is. Thoughts on this? Do you want to see a Clayface movie?
I think that growing up, was character-oriented and franchise-oriented, and as I've gotten older, I am like much more artist oriented. So like, I'm wondering how this was pitched, who it was pitched to, who accepted. Was this Mike Flanagan's idea? Was this James Gunn's idea that he pitched to him? And you know, I like Mike Flanagan. I remember watching Oculus many years ago. I remember watching Hush many years ago. I haven't seen everything he's made. Like Haunting of Hill House was obviously like a big peak, I think. People love Midnight Mass, so like this is really cool in terms of like having him in the room,
right?
And this isn't the Batman universe, obviously, right? This is DCU.
Yeah.
So I'm like they also have that other guy Metamorpho in the Superman movie. I believe his name is. So I think that James Gunn is going to give us a lot of, and then we have Swamp Thing, right? So they're clearly building like a theme of like body horror, dysmorphia, you
Yeah.
know, really strong themes of like identity and, you know, body issues, and there's also really strong potential for like really like deep, profound storytelling. I think with Clayface and with Mike Flanagan specifically, like he does a really good job of grounding like people in their lives and their professions and their personal lives in his stories. So I imagine like they were gonna get a story about an actor who is like either a total piece of shit or really unlucky, and and we're gonna see the story play out. So there's so much potential here, but there is another part of me that is like, James Gunn, where's the Wonder Woman animated series? James Gunn, when are we going to hear about Paradise Lost? Even
Yeah.
last night at the Game Awards, I'm like, where's the Wonder Woman game? What's going on here? I'm just like, what's going on?
Did you hear the rumor about that game?
That they didn't start working on it until like a year ago or something?
Yeah, apparently it's going to be no later, at the latest, or at the earliest, 2026. But they're saying
As a
most likely.
DC fan, I am the most bitter about Wonder Woman because
Yeah.
I wanted a Wonder Woman show or movie in middle
Yeah.
school, never got it. Wanted one of those in high school, didn't get it. Had to wait till 2017 for a movie, and then the next movie wasn't good. So, and historically, like, I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but like, people aren't even that positive about wanting to like talk about Gal Gadot at all anyway, like these days. And like,
Yeah.
it just sucks. Like, it sucks that like the legacy of the character was like soaring so high in the late 2010s, and then like it feels like if I bring up the character now, people are like, oh, like that person played that character, ew. And I'm like, oh man, like please bring us into a golden age for this character. And it's like, anyways, that's like a reaction I do have when I see this Mike Flanagan Clayface.
Sure.
It's like, okay, I'm glad James Gunn is having fun. I'm glad people are getting artists that are doing stuff they're passionate about. They're not being forced to work on stuff that they don't want to. Like there's a major there's like an army movie that they announced too, with like a really prolific auteur director, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
forgot the name of the director and I forgot the name of the project, but like that's another example of like they're getting people who are like auteurs. They're getting people who are outside of franchise filmmaking, who have a pedigree. Not just like, oh, this person's on their third film ever. It's Ryan Coogler. Never made a big movie before. And it's like, thank God that worked out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm tired of that. I'm so tired of that. I want new blood. I want like to reward new artists that are coming up. But I'm also tired of it. Like, I'm tired of like getting unexperienced people and then us asking ourselves like, why are these things getting worse? So Mike Flanagan like working on a DCU movie is a massive W. And for a character like this, like I'm seeing a through line. I'm seeing the theme of the DCU. Like there's clearly going to be many characters that are like this, that have like this type of issue of their body. They're no longer human. They're no longer can like be perceived as human. They can, you know what I mean? Like Swamp Thing, Metamorpho, and now Clayface. I think that James Gunn is telling a story here, and even with something like Peacemaker, he also has his own issues of his identity and like seeing himself as a hero or not. And so I'm really like excited about like the heart of this all, like the heart of the themes here. Like what kind of through line are we going to be getting between all of these projects? So it's really exciting.
I agree. Yeah, no, I think like, you know, I've had some conversations with people being like, a Clayface movie without Batman. Oh, I don't want that. But I think Clayface is one of the villains I think could 100% hold his own movie without even the connections to the DC.
100%.
I think he's such a rich character. Like I think that episode of like Batman, the animated series where they're just like, you know, like this identity crisis of a man, of just like, without my passion, without me being able to an actor, who am I? Like who am I as a person? I think is such a fascinating like character study of a movie. I 100% think that. And I think it's very important, jumping into the early days of DC Studios, to change the narrative of this universe, right? To kind of change. I mean, let's be honest. DC has a terrible reputation at the moment. If you've liked the last several movies, or if you haven't, I don't care.
Yeah.
Bad reputation, 100%. Like they're trying to. We just had Joker 2, which lost like so much money. So I
could
think
invoke
like
the Arrowverse again.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Just in terms of like negativity. And we're all
Yeah.
fans of it here, I think. Like to
Right.
say that, like, but it's true.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think like, Clayface should be very low budget. Get a like horror director that can come in. This will come out Halloween, so you're gonna bring in all the Halloween fans that are like, okay, this looks like a fun, scary movie. I'll go check this out. But it definitely is one of those things. It's like, oh, this is one of the first DCU projects. It's gonna be Clayface before Batman, Clayface before Wonder Woman, Clayface before Green Lantern. Like that's definitely a choice. Let me pull up the schedule though, because they officially today gave it an official date of when it's coming out, and the official.
Insane.
Did you see this yet?
No.
Okay, so this is breaking news for you. So here are the next official announcement. We had 2 official announcements for upcoming DC studio projects. So obviously Superman is July 11th, 2025. Makes sense. We're very excited for that. Supergirl will be June 22nd of 2026. Clayface is September 11th, 2026. Which means that will be the 3rd ever DC Studios project, which is a move for sure. Like I guess technically 4th. I guess we're not talking movies. So it's like Creature Commando, Superman, Supergirl.
I was gonna say, have you seen any Creature Commandos?
I have. I've seen the first 3. Yeah.
So we've already met him. Supposedly. Yeah.
Potentially. Yeah. Yeah. No. I mean, I'm curious. And then the Batman 2 is October 2026. No, I think that's moving. I like with this being September. There's no way October is Batman. So I'm thinking Batman gets moved to 2027. Unfortunately. Totally. Which really sucks. Like going from 2022 to 2027 is a massive jump in like.
That's a weird year. 2026 is a weird year. That's very strange to me.
And then Dynamic Duo, which is like that Robin animated movie they're working on, is 2028. That has a release date too now. Right. So yeah, no, I mean I'm totally okay with this. I'm totally fine with this happening. Again, my only critique is just like it's very early on, but I'm wondering if it's maybe just a thing of like, well, they can't get Batman out in time, so let's make this little small movie while we wait. Maybe that's the idea, but.
Have you by any chance read Justice League: The New Frontier by Darwin Cook? It's a big recommendation in terms of like also like Kingdom Come as well. Like I think those are 2 books he's kind of drawing on for like the larger universe. Are you okay?
Yeah, I had a dish fall next to me. I'm so sorry.
That's so good. No, that's good. I recommend those 2 books because I think that's what he's probably gonna like draw on in terms of like the wider storyline. And with these books, like specifically, he does like Darwin Cook's book specifically, like he'll introduce a character early on in the book in like 1 decade. Like it spans many decades, this book. I'm holding it actually in my hands right now. Like like it spans many decades, and you meet like characters early on in the book that like come back later that like don't feel like a main character for a while, and then they show their importance again by like the 3rd act of the story. So I'm wondering like, okay, Clayface, like 3rd film, like I wonder if he's gonna be really important then and moving forward, or if this is again just about like setting up themes, right, with the body dysmorphia stuff and the. Like after this, it's going to be Swamp Thing, right? So how is this going to differentiate from something like Swamp Thing? So I'm wondering, like, how much of this is James Gunn, like, putting a flag down and saying, like, I don't care about shared universe as much. Like, this is a shared universe, but this is just a really cool movie that we're making, happen to be making. And it happens to take place in our universe. Or if it's like, oh, no, Clayface is going to have, like, a huge role. Like I think that's like where our brains have been trained to do, where it's like, oh my god, they're bringing Daredevil back. He's gonna be like the most important character in Avengers now, and it's like no, like maybe it's just it's just a thing, and it's gonna be really cool, and we can be happy about it. But again, like knowing how many characters we're already gonna have that are gonna be like him, that have his issues, makes me wonder, like, are they gonna make a team of these guys? You make a team of freaky like.
Suicide Squad or like Creature Commandos season 2 or something. Yeah.
Like Swamp Thing next to Clayface, next to like Metamorpho, like these freaky characters all together. Like Deadman
Yeah.
shows up. I don't know. Like
I do have to say, just kind of like, not to go off topic, we can circle back around if you really want to, but like, look in these first 5 projects here, and obviously there's going to be things in between, like Green Lanterns will probably get a date, Waller will probably get a date, stuff like that. But like, our 5 projects here are 3 Batman projects, 2 Superman projects, which is like very different from that original roster that we heard back in 2023, which to me, this kind of screams, and maybe I'm just me in my head, but like a little safe, right? It's like, which isn't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
yeah.
Actually, it's probably smart, but it's like, oh, we have a little bit of concern. So let's focus on Superman characters who are popular. Let's focus on some Batman projects that are popular, that we know can most likely do well in the box office. And then maybe we can start doing some of those projects that we announced are more risky. We can do The Authority. We can do Swamp Thing. We can do, some of these other things. Again, not a bad thing, right? Like, I understand. I think it's most important here to make sure we have a successful launch, because if it's not, we're not getting anything else. It's like dead on arrival, 100%. So, again, I don't hate this.
It's hard for me to see Supergirl doing well, only because it's a year after Superman, and I just can't gauge like people's interest. Like, I know I'll be there day one. Like, I'm not really speaking for myself here. I'm just saying that it's hard for me to gauge people's interest. Like, it really just depends on that movie, Superman. Like, it really just depends on how good that one is, how they introduce her in that, and like, it's really all riding on that. Like, and with Dynamic Duo, I think Dynamic Duo and Supergirl are in a similar position where it's like, it's gonna take the other ones to prove the value of those ones, I think, unfortunately.
Sure.
Like, and with Dynamic Duo, like, I do have to say, like, I don't know if I really care about that one that much. Like, I just want to see like a proper Dick Grayson story, like, adapted, and it feels like this is Elseworld stuff that I don't care about. Like, could be straight to DVD for all I care. And I know, like, that's really disparaging and maybe a mean thing to say, but it's like, it's not like Robin to me. Like, this is its own thing, and that's cool. Like, I remember reading the Robins comic, where it's like a universe where there's like a city filled with Robins. I'm not like a hater of like Elseworlds. I just know that, like, for a first 5 film lineup, like, why is one of them on Elseworlds? Like I agree. Like, it feels a lot like this. They want something to be their own Spider-Verse, and they're giving it to Robin, and it's like, I love Robin. But I'm also thinking to myself, like, there's a lot of other characters that could have been given the Spider-Verse treatment. Like, a lot of other characters. Like, again, Wonder Woman could have been given, like, a cool animated art style film franchise with the Amazons. And it's like, or like Green Lantern, or like Firestorm, or, like, I'm glad Blue Beetle's getting an animated show, but it's like,
yeah, I like that.
So, like, out of all 5 of those, like, the one I'm least like likely to like care about it is Dynamic Duo, but
that's fair.
I'm obviously really excited about Supergirl, though. Like, the casting and stuff is amazing.
I think why I'm excited is, I think, like, to me, that does scream kind of like what we're talking about in terms of like art piece, because that's going to be this like claymation style movie, which is like such a move. Like, that's something that like Walter Hamada never would have done. Like, that's definitely not like a David Zaslav thing. And I think maybe they're like, I'm thinking maybe that's for them hopefully setting a potential status quo for what this can be, right? Where it's like, I think
like as a franchise.
Yeah, like, I think Superman and Superhero are going to be more traditional superhero movies. Clayface is a rated R, potentially like horror movie. And then Batman 2, and, that's an Elseworld live action story. And then Dynamic is a Elseworld animated movie, which is what I wanted. I wanted a lot more similar to Spider-Verse, similar to Super Pets, right? Where they are these standalone comic book animated movies in the cinema, which is exciting to me.
I think part of the reason, like, why I might be a bit negative is it's not comic accurate, and that's just me being a purist. So it's not so much that it's like, if it was canon to the new DCU, I would care more about it, obviously. But I think it's specifically that it's going to tell a story we've never seen before, from the perspective of someone, me being that someone who wants to just see Robin adapted correctly. And it's like, we haven't gotten like a proper Robin like adaptation for a long time. So it's like, for them to like it sounds so cool, like stop motion
Yeah.
claymation, and it's exactly what you're saying, right? Like it's gonna be like true like artistic vision, and that's something to like celebrate. I think it is something
Yeah.
to celebrate. I'm just a little bit annoyed by the idea that it's like, okay, but like when are we gonna do like Robin for real? Like when
Right.
are we for real gonna do that? And again, like if it was canon to the DCU, like I would care about it like slightly more. Like everything that I am hearing about it, I'm just wishing that it was like comic accurate, because the idea of Dick Grayson and Jason Todd having a story together is obviously like a really cool idea. Like it's undeniably like a really cool idea.
Right.
But it also feels like a comic book that I would have read that would have been forgotten. So
Right. That's fair. I mean, to play the other side of it a little bit too, though, like we do have Teen Titans coming potentially. We do have Brave and the Bold happening.
it's true.
I assume there will be a Dick Grayson in there, unless
That's
Teen
very
Titans
true.
is your not Jason Todd, Damian Wayne. Maybe they go that direction, but I do think that the DCU will be doing Dick Grayson at some point.
I think they're gonna skip over his origin story and how he
I
becomes
agree.
Nightwing. Like I think he's just gonna be Nightwing, which
I
bothers
agree.
me a little bit, but it's fine. Like I think that there's a magic to seeing Bruce accept a partner. I think that's a moment that fans deserve to see, and I've always said that. Like
Yeah.
the concept of Bruce accepting that is really cool, and him also
Right.
realizing that he's like providing like a source of like a fulfillment and like closure
Right.
for this young orphan that is going through something similar that he went through. To skip over that story as if it's
Right.
like, oh, fans already know the story, so we don't need to do it. It's like, no, like we don't
Right.
really know that story. Last time we got it was in 1997. Like, come on, like give me that story. Like, anyways.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I think just like the thought process is probably like they want to finally adapt the like Bat family, and like that's something we've never got to see like all of them on screen at the same time. So having like your Dick Grayson and your Batwing and your Batwoman and Batgirl,
Jason
like I feel like
Todd.
yeah, like I think that's the idea, and like they've also teased that they will be sometimes jumping around. So maybe there's a world where we get Backflash stuff in another movie or another,
Please
or
give me
maybe
that. I would
like
love that.
yeah, like I hope things were like how Jordan's gonna be 50 in this DC universe. So I'm hoping like maybe we'll get like a Flash, like, like a movie set in like the 90s or something where he's kind of in his 20s or whatever. But my only kind of last thing I want to mention is I am worried about Supergirl, just because that comes up the same month as Spider-Man 4, and I'm like, well, I hope he moves that, because they will get destroyed otherwise.
I can't even visualize like what that month would be like. I don't even know what the marketing for both of those movies would even look like. I just imagine like Daredevil showing up in a Spider-Man trailer, and then like Supergirl fighting Brainiac, and me just not knowing like how to like process. I'm obviously seeing both. I mean,
right.
But it's also just like, whoa, that's insane.
It's similar to like next year where it's going to be Fantastic Four and Superman. It's like, I'm nervous about that. I'm nervous about Superman. I hope it still does well.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I can't predict something like that. That's insane.
With that being said, though, an hour in, we are going to be jumping into our Iron Man 2 discussion. Obviously, Iron Man 2 was the third ever MCU movie. Let's just jump into it, though. Like, did you see this in theaters? Yep. Like, what was your kind of experience watching this movie for the first time?
Oh man, I was in the 7th grade, and I saw it on the Friday after school with a bunch of kids from my class, and we were all excited about it. And immediately when we left the theater, we all knew it wasn't as good as the first one. And like, we were young, right? Like we were very young and easy to please. None of us hated it. None of us thought it was bad. We were all just like, that was dope. That was good. Not as good as the first one, like definitely.
Right.
Like there was something different about it. And like over the years, I think that general opinion like grew to the size of like, well, that movie's a piece of shit. Like it's like, wait, hold on. Like, wait, what's going on here?
Right.
But it was the first time I had ever heard the phrase like, it was good, but it's mostly just setting up the future. Like it's mostly just setting up like the next thing. And I was like, oh, that's like an interesting thing to hear. And then like that sentence would be repeated for the next forever until today. People still say that about projects that come out. And I think that Iron Man 2 primed us for a type of movie that would become the norm.
Right.
Like Wakanda Forever introduces Riri Williams for her spinoff. and a bigger crossover for the future. Like Daredevil season 2 is something that I can compare Iron Man 2 to very well. Iron Man 1, highly successful. It's supposed to go into the crossover, but then it's so successful that fans want more. So then they say, okay, let's just give them like a sequel, even though that wasn't part of our original plan. And we'll throw in some characters there and it'll help set up our crossover. Literally the exact same thing would happen with Daredevil, which was season 2, Punisher, setting up Defenders, you know? So it's fascinating to see like the parallels between Iron Man 2 and like many other projects, even like Batman v Superman to an extent. Like just setting up, like it's a film to set up the future, but I do think there's a lot of things here like on its own merits that is like really fantastic, honestly.
Yeah, I think like I was talking to my friend earlier about it, where it's like, yeah, this movie is kind of a setup movie, but what kind of sets it apart to a lot of modern superhero movies is like it succeeds at setting them up, right? So like if you look at some modern MCU stuff that sets up a lot of stuff, if you look at like DC and like even stuff like a Power Rangers movie and stuff like that, where it's like they set these cool things up, but because of studio stuff, because of real life like situations, they never get a chance to do that. Everything they set up here comes to path very beautifully. Like I can watch this movie and be like, oh, that was leading to this, and that was leading to this, and this went to this, and like that's a really cool. Like one of my favorite moments in the movie was like when Coulson's like, yeah, I'm going to New Mexico. I had to take care of something. Oh, like in Thor inside the next movie, that's so cool that they can do these little breadcrumbs. Like I think it works. I think for like what it's trying to do in terms of setting up for the most part, and like we can talk about like the consequence of that. They do a good job at that. Like I think it does its job.
Yeah, I think that even the Hydra guy who wants Tony's suits, like we didn't know he was Hydra at the time, and the fact that Winter Soldier retroactively made him Hydra was such a genius thing to do. Because then when you revisit those scenes, it just completely alters the context completely of like what those scenes mean. So I think that in regards to like how much this movie juggles, like I did a little bit of research about like how many storylines, comic book storylines this film adapts, and like these days I'm generally impressed with a film that can cram so many comic book storylines and it isn't a total disaster. Like a good example is Into the Spider-Verse. Like Into the Spider-Verse is adapting his origin and the uncle storyline and Spider-Man and Spider-Verse. Iron Man 2 is similar where it's so many. Like I can't list them all, but there are so many comic book storylines being adapted in this movie, and it's remarkable. It's remarkable that it's as good as it is, and I don't think anyone here would ever like blame Jon Favreau for any of the issues of this movie.
No,
there's just absolutely no way after looking at his whole career to up till this point, especially like in present day. There's no way it was his fault. Like there's just no way that anything that went wrong was Jon Favreau's fault, and I just wanted to acknowledge that.
No, 100%. Like it's very clear, and I think this is one of the better examples of it. But it does seem like there was a lot of studio interference. Studios being like, "Oh, we want you to do this, 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 and this," and him having his own story, what he wants to do with it, and being like, "Okay," trying to get both done, which is why I think there's so many elements within this movie. Trying to be like, "Okay, it's an Avengers pre-show." But also, we want it to be a strong story for Tony Stark as well. And I feel like Jon Favreau keeps getting himself in these situations with Star Wars, with The Lion King, where it's like studios keep getting in the way of his vision. And like, he's a great director. I really want to see him do something else again, like something kind of where he gets to run the show, where he's in charge of everything. I
wanted to like to point out some cool moments like in the deleted scenes, because I think that this is one of those films that it goes through that classic thing of it comes out and then the actor who plays the villain tells us how much we lost out on. Like I think of like the Snyder Cut. I think of a lot of projects where like we get this really badass actor who gets to play the villain, and like we get the movie and you know we do enjoy like people like Mickey Rourke and his performance, but like we all know there was like something off, right? And then we find out later like, oh yeah, there was a lot on the cutting room floor,
right?
And unfortunately, like those aren't available in like deleted scenes. I couldn't find those. Like I couldn't find like Mickey Rourke's like standout like deleted scenes. Like I found a lot of other cool stuff though, like the nanotech ball. Like there's a moment where Tony throws a nanotech ball at Pepper's hand and then it melts in her hand and she's like, this is disgusting. well, I hate when you do this. And so they set this up like early on, and then it comes back in the third act of Iron Man 2. Like there's supposed to be a scene where one of them throws it to the other, and then it like helps them like defeat Vanko. So it was actually like
Wow.
they were gonna set up Nano, and it's in the deleted scene. You can see this moment.
Right.
And there's so many things like that. Like Coulson and Pepper get a scene together in the opening in the courtroom, and they're like catching up, like they're just work friends, and it's so cute. And it's not in the movie, and it would have set up like that Avengers moment where it's like, oh, his name, why are you calling him Phil? Like his name is Agent. And I think that to its credit, that moment hits a lot better because they deleted this scene, because it was more of a surprise that they were friends. But again, like this is an example of like there's a lot of stuff here. You know, there's another great scene where Tony and Rhodey are on the plane, and Tony's talking about how Rhodey, it feels like you really like ambushed me here, like and I'm trying to protect the free world. That's what he says to Rhodey. And like, and Pepper and Rhodey are looking at him like, you're an asshole, dude. Like you're here to protect the free world. Like really? And it's like this really grounded moment, and showing like Tony's like delusion a little bit. And then Rhodey says something amazing to him. He says, I think hanging out with you is bad for our friendship. And there's this long silence, and it's so funny. And yeah, I just think that I have my own little theory as to why some of these scenes were cut. Like, just to give you another example, there's another scene where at the birthday party, Pepper arrives at the party and gives Tony a gift, and Tony's already being announced. He's like, I don't like to be handed things. It's like, Tony, like, what are you doing? And then he asks Pepper to go get him a drink while him and Natasha hang out, and he's just being an asshole. And I think a lot of the scenes are like this. There's another one where Olivia Munn is standing like on his shoulders, like shooting like repulsor blasts. So like my theory to you is that I think a lot of the scenes that were cut from Iron Man 2 just make him look like a huge asshole and like really unlikable. Yeah. And I think that they may have leaned too much into it to the point that they got cold feet. Not necessarily saying it's a decision I would have made. I would have probably been like, yeah, let's portray this. This guy thinks he's dying, and it's his last birthday of his life, he thinks.
Right.
That was not acknowledged enough. Because if you talk about his decision-making in that movie from the context of that, like, he thought it was his last birthday ever. And he lets Rhodey take his suit without putting any safety protocols on it. He doesn't lock Rhodey out of the suit because he thinks that he's going to die. He thinks that no one is going to be there. So he trusts Rhodey with the suit. They have the fight, and it's all dramatic and stuff. But that is like something to acknowledge. Like he could have locked Rhodey out of the suit. He didn't, because he literally thinks this is his last like couple of nights on Earth. So
yeah, no, I mean I 100% agree. Like I kind of wish that's a narrative that they leaned harder in. Like there's a point in the third act I was like, oh yeah, he is supposed to be dying, and it doesn't really register throughout the movie. It's just he's kind of being an ass the whole time. And like I think that's a fantastic narrative for Tony. Like I think it's a movie about legacy and about like reflecting on what his father wanted for him and like what he wanted him to do. And this, while he's dying, he's like, what kind of legacy did I give to the world? And he thinks that it's a good legacy, but we're seeing what his technology has done to the world and all the drama it's caused. Again, these are all really good themes, but I agree with you. I don't know if any of them were like I don't know if he had enough time with these ideas to to make them as good as I think they could have been. I 100% agree.
That's why I think that moment on the plane was so special. Like that's one of the scenes that I would have kept in. It's such a grounded moment. They're all on the private plane together, and they're just like calling Tony out, and Tony's like deflecting. It's like very real moment, and I think it would have set up the rest of the film better. Like it's remarkable. Like people don't think about these things when they look at deleted scenes, how much like one moment can like recontextualize the next 90 minutes that you're about to see, you know? And I think that like the volatile, self-obsessed, doesn't play well with others like tagline, that's all stuff that like Natasha witnesses in these deleted scenes. You get to see, it's actually, sometimes it's literally like they're showing like her reaction shots in these moments. And as a kid, I always thought this description of him was really harsh. And nowadays, after rewatching this film and rewatching some of these deleted scenes, like I've worked in mental health for like many years of my life. I'm studying mental health now, and like I can see it now. Like I can see like the type of harm he's doing to the people around him, and physical and emotional, and how like his aha moment is watching the video of his dad.
Yeah.
And I think that Tony should have had more moments with Pepper and Rhodey to get to his aha moment. And maybe he did a little bit, but I think that it would have been a much more meaningful, grounded movie had that been the case. But at the same time, going back to what we were talking about earlier with people like not remembering this movie really well, I really don't think Endgame's moment with him, with his dad, hits as well without this movie. And no one really talks about that. Like, everyone I saw Endgame with was like, oh, I loved when he was with his dad. Like, I loved when he got to see his dad again. And it's like, why do you love that? What previous, like, MCU story would have made you care about something like that? And it's like, it's Iron Man 2. Like, Iron Man 2 is the project that would have made people care about that. But people don't really remember the MCU that way. People remember, like, the totality of the MCU. They don't remember, like, the specific era of, like, oh, yeah, 2011, I was in the movie theater. We saw Tony's dad, and he said, oh, you're my greatest creation. It's like, people don't remember, like, specific things like that. But when you revisit a film like this, you go, like, oh, yeah, like, that's totally, like, they laid the groundwork.
And even that, like, I think that one scene kind of, like, retrospects Tony's character as a whole. Like, his whole thing is that, like, Tony sacrifices himself to, like, defeat Thanos in the final moment. Like, that was his greatest achievement, was his son, like, putting him on this earth to do great things. And it's all like led into that point. You're 100% right. Like that is such a powerful moment. And again, I wish they could have leaned in a little bit. I wish they could have, like, done a little bit more reflecting. And actually, I think the first act of this movie is probably my favorite act of the movie, just because I feel like there is so much, like, reflection on Tony as a character before we get into all the, like the Whiplash stuff and all this other stuff. It's just like Tony as a character and how he's currently feeling, and, you know, like, the people in his life and trying to balance the company and Iron Man. And like I really love that, like, the opening court scene. Like, I think that scene kind of, like, represents Tony really well, just, or at least Tony at this point in his life, where he's still kind of like he's trying to do better, he's trying to help the world, but he's also, like, still an asshole. Like, he's still kind of like he's causing a ruckus, he's causing things,
and he's got an overinflated sense of himself.
100%. And I'll say it, like, I think I think the highlight of this movie, and there's a couple actors I'll give this to, but I like Robert Downey, and I said this in the first movie thing I did, where, like, Robert Downey's so good. Like, I know sometimes we kind of look back on it and all the things now where it's like, oh my gosh, he gets all the glory, blah, blah, blah. But Robert Downey's performance as Tony Stark is just fantastic. Like, he kills that role. And, like, he does so good, because it's like, while he's being such an ass, we love watching him on screen. It's such, like, I could sit here and watch, you know, Robert Downey play Tony Stark for, like, 3 hours straight, because he's just so much fun in that role. And I do think he carries it a little bit.
Oh, for sure. I think that that's something to address as well, which is, like, the demon and the bottle storyline, which is they dance around it because I think Robert Downey Jr. went through something similar in his life. And to his credit, like, he still manages to, like, bring a really compelling story that doesn't, like, directly cover, like, alcohol addiction. I still love, like, the comic book version of Iron Man, that it's explained that he's very afraid to be Iron Man in the suit, fighting and flying around and doing these things. So he's also drinking out of fear. Like, he's not just like, oh, I'm drinking a lot on my off time. He's literally, like, drunk superhero. Like, he's drunk superheroing.
Right.
And I think that that's a very fascinating, like, place to go. They didn't go those places, but it needs to be acknowledged that that's part of the way they adapted this. And I do think they did a good job with making it feel controversial, making it feel, like, tragic. But again, like, that's earlier when I brought up, like, I wanted Pepper and Rhodey to be part of his aha moment, because, like, again, like, as someone who's worked in, like, these fields of, like, addiction and, like, at-risk youth and, like, people who are struggling, like, it's the people around you, it's your support system that is, like, helping you, like, see through it. And I suppose we do. It's not like it's nothing. Like, I'm not gonna perpetuate the idea that the movie doesn't give us any of that. Like, even in the deleted scenes, I got more of Rhodey and Pepper giving each other looks, and, like, Natasha, like, assessing him, and, like, more, like, conveying how problematic he was. And that's all great, but, like, I didn't see enough of, like, them, like, having, like, an intervention with him, so to speak, like a moment with him to, like, make him see a reality of the situation. And Rhodey and him do get a great scene of, like, Rhodey finds out that he's dying. That's a good scene. But yeah, there's not much more to say on that other than I do think that with the restrictions they had, they portrayed it decently well. They portrayed like what Iron Man like can go through as like a character.
Yeah, I kind of do agree though, because like I did kind of crave like a final moment of him like reflecting on himself throughout the movie. Like they kind of just like brush it off, being like, "Yeah, he was dying, it's fine," but it's like he was an asshole most of this movie to Pepper, and to Nat and to Rhodey. Like I kind of wanted a moment of like, "Yeah, I was an asshole. I'm sorry," or something. And like maybe the point is he's still an asshole and he still needs to go through Avengers, he needs to go through Iron Man 3 to get to that point. But I would have liked just a little something to kind of tie it all together. Just him slightly realizing, yeah, maybe I could have handled all this better. Maybe I was an ass. I'm sorry. I don't know, something.
No, I totally agree, and that's probably what's missing here. Is that it's very easy for him. Like he watches a video, inspiring video of his dad, and now he's got it good to go. And he makes the new element, and he's good to go. Like
Right.
it feels a bit too easy, but it is like comic book movie fun stuff like for kids. And I obviously want something really dramatic, and you can't help but wonder like what would Mickey Rourke's. Maybe it was Mickey Rourke that got him to see his aha moment.
Right.
Maybe Mickey Rourke was the one. Maybe it wasn't his support system. But I definitely watched the film from the perspective of like, as a kid, I watched it from a superhero fan, but as an adult, I watch it from a mental health like perspective where I'm like, oh yeah, he sucks to be around. And it would have been nice to like, see Pepper and Rhodey have like a bigger part in that. I just want to mention that the opening of this movie is so good when he jumps out of the plane, and the alternate opening from the trailer is so good where he's like at the toilet throwing up, and like Pepper, I don't know if you've seen that. It's so good. Like look, if you ever get a chance to like watch anything, watch that alternate opening. It starts with him like at the toilet throwing up, and Pepper is like helping him get up, and they're acting like they're going on this like crazy like messed up mission that's super dangerous. And he's like, where's the drop zone? Where's the drop? He's like, turn this plane around. Like he's acting like insane. And then he's like, he asks the iconic line. He's like, you want to give me a kiss for good luck or something like that? And then she kisses the helmet and then throws the helmet out. And he's like, you complete me, and then jumps out. Like that should have been the actual opening. I don't care what anyone says. Like that was in the trailer, and I don't get it. Like I guess it was too goofy for them. I mean, he definitely can't fly without a helmet. Like, but I don't know how he would see flying that fast without a helmet. But I still would have enjoyed that opening. I just wanted to shout it out.
Yeah, I'm kind of going through the cast here. I want to shout out. I would just want to talk about a couple of characters we have here. We already kind of talked about Ivo. Like I would say he, unfortunately, is the weakest link here. Unfortunately, like you said, there's a lot of things they didn't get to do with him.
He's like, very mad. Mickey Rourke is very mad about this.
Yeah, it's like very clear. He just like. He kind of comes across as this kind of like two-dimensional villain. He's just like, oh, I'm a crazy little villain. And it's like, you definitely see things cut there that you kind of wanted to see more. I will say we have to mention this Justin is Hammer. What's that?
I said Justin Hammer.
Justin Hammer is one. Yeah, I did want to mention because I think he, like I said, Downey's obviously the highlight. I think Justin Hammer is also easily one of the best parts of this movie. Like he is fantastic.
He should have came back. He should have been the foil for Iron Man for a longer amount of time. One of his greatest lines in this film is he's talking about Tony. He says he insists it's a shield and to cower behind him. And I remember as a kid loving that line because I knew exactly what they were doing. They were literally just like reminding us that the next movie was Captain America. Mm-hmm. And I just loved I love that line. I love when Sam Rockwell says that line. It's so good. That whole scene gives.
I am convinced, and we don't know if the movie's happening anymore, but I am convinced that Armor Wars would have had Justin Hammer come back and potentially as the main villain. Good. That because that's Don Cheadle's character at the head, and those two kind of the clash after all those years is such a cool idea. Like this idea that his like suit of armor got taken away, or like someone's after the suit of armor now that Tony's dead. Justin Hammer makes perfect sense. Like he would 100% try to get a hold of these after all these years. I don't know, man. I don't know if that's still happening, but I mean, John Cheadle, I also have to mention because this is his technical MCU debut. I love his opening, be like, "Hey, it's me. I'm here. Deal with it." I think that's such a fun like recasting line moment, just being like, yeah, I know he's
So
not the same
smooth.
guy.
We
Yeah,
barely
it's so
even talked about it because it's that's how smooth it is.
yeah, no, you really don't. Listen, no offense to the previous actor, I bet he would have done a great job, but I am glad that Don Cheadle is our Rhodey. Like I just can't imagine it as anybody else. He's so iconic at this point. And again, there's a reason they wanted to give him his own project, because like Don Cheadle is so good, and I think he really complements the cast of like the Avengers and
Yeah.
obviously these Iron Man movies, and he's such a connection with all these characters. I pray, like obviously I don't love the whole Downey Doctor Doom situation, but I think Rhodey should be one of the leads of that movie if we are going that direction, because it's like
Yeah.
that should be the connection you aim for. Is like
Especially
like
since he was Iron Man in Secret Wars comic. Like he
yeah, and like obviously Secret Invasion was not my favorite project, but what I loved, I actually really liked the whole scroll thing, because I think that
Sure.
idea is really cool. This idea of like, I missed the funeral of my best friend, I missed the fight of our lives. How do I deal with that? And then someone else coming in and be like, yeah, I had the face of your best friend. How are you going to deal with that grief? Like that's a really fun idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wanted to say that like the two things I was most excited to see with rewatching this was Justin Hammer and Natasha. That's crazy that like she was introduced in this, and I think historically that we never like it's hard for me to talk about it without like getting into like the more political aspect of it, or like the I don't know what like word to use for this type of thing, because it's not exactly political, but it's like the whole like sex appeal aspect of her character.
I agree.
And how that obviously went away by the time we get to the Black Widow movie. And with Iron Man 2, it's so specifically so 2010.
Yeah.
Like she's changing in the back of the car while Rhodey's looking in the rearview mirror type of thing. And like at the time when I was a kid, it was just the norm, right?
Right.
And like looking back on it, it's really fascinating to like watch her fight scene and the way they shoot it in the hallway, and like the type of move she does. And it's good, like it's good stuff, and it's interesting for me to feel like a weird sense of conflict inside when I'm rewatching. I'm like, oh, this is so nostalgic, it's so fun. But we also never like, it feels like we never got that Natasha for like after that point. Like she kept changing, which is always a very good thing. And I don't know. I don't even know if I have like a direct opinion on this. It's just a fascinating thing to see, where it's like they introduce a female character and like charge her up with all this sex appeal, and then like slowly over time the actress gets more power and then is able to like remove those things and like bring like a more meaningful part of the character. So it's just interesting to like see this version of her, and to imagine like what would have this version of this character be like if they got a standalone film. Because I think that I like the Black Widow movie, but I would have rather the Black Widow movie exist in an earlier phase, just because of the types of films they were making. I think it would have been something really special. And like just looking at that version of Black Widow, it was such an exciting time to like get that character, because I remember like nobody knew. Like I remember being a kid and being like, whoa, they're introducing that character. Wow. Like that's so insane. Like this is a very big deal. I am like fortunate enough that I was exposed to that character in comics at an early point in my childhood, which is really weird because it's just Black Widow. Like before 2010, that was a nothing character. But I was like plugged in enough that it was like, oh my god, this is like Wonder Woman and Batman v Superman. Like this is a massive deal. Like this, and no one knows why it's a massive deal yet. So historically, like it's so fun to revisit it and think to myself like, wow, this character is so huge now. Like this is a huge character now. Like, and I saw it. I didn't necessarily see it coming. I just knew that it was like, oh my god, this is the beginning. Like Avengers is real. Avengers is real. Like Black Widow is going to be in Iron Man 2. Like it's just really special. And again, I hate to bring up Daredevil again, but that's how it was like getting Punisher in season 2 of Daredevil, where it's like,
right,
these projects wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the success of the first one. Like Iron Man 1 was so good that it led to like this movie being made in the way that it was, and like being so ambitious, and like it's really cool. Like we're lucky to have a movie like this.
No, like, you know, I kind of want to go back to like your like Black Widow point in a second, because I think that's a very interesting conversation. But like, there was a moment I was watching this, because I didn't see this in theaters. I was very like I didn't get into it until like the Infinity Saga. Really, like that's when I was really getting into the stuff. But like I was just thinking like, what a cool time it would have been knowing all that stuff back when this movie was in theaters. Getting to see Iron Man, getting to see Nick Fury, Black Widow, that ending thing with the Thor's hammer. Like, what a time that must have been as a fan to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're seeing
And
this
you
on
couldn't
screen.
visualize it. You couldn't visualize what the future looked like.
That's really cool. Yeah. No, I do want to answer my friend Noah's comment here. Justin Hammer and the actor that played him was the best part of Iron Man 2, in my opinion. I think I agree.
Hell yeah.
I think he's really, really good. Like,
hard
he's
to
so
disagree with
charismatic.
that.
I hope he's back. Shout out to What If Season 2 for bringing him in. Very random appearance. I was like, you know what? Hell yeah. At least it's
Shout out to
something.
Luke Cage for just invoking his name. I remember like Cottonmouth, he's like holding the Chitauri Judas killer weapon. He's like, this is some Tony Stark, Justin Hammer shit. Like, and I'm like, I remember at the time in 2016 being like, holy shit, it's canon, it's real. And now it is canon.
No, it is canon, thank God. But no, like I think that's a really interesting point that you brought up in terms of like Black Widow and how they sexualized her as a character, and like let's be honest, like I think the MCU has always kind of struggled with how they portray their female characters. Like it's always been kind of rough. Either it's like they're for the male gaze or they are just non-existent. Like it took until 2019 for them to have a female-led movie, and it's like that's a problem for sure. And like it is. It's hard because I know Black Widow as a character, can sometimes come across as that. Like that's something in her character. I understand.
She's supposed to be unsuspecting.
Yeah, no. Like I can 100% get like she's a spy that's going to be part of her thing, but like I 100% agree. Like it is very cool to kind of like I think after Winter Soldier especially, they were like, okay, let's actually change how we perceive this character. Like she's not just a character for the male gaze. She's her own individual thing, and I 100% agree. I think Phase 2 should have had
one of the boys. I think that's a fair assessment. Like among the Avengers, she's like one of the boys. Like I feel like that's a fair description of it. If that doesn't sound weird,
right? Yeah, no. Like I think Phase 2 we should have had like a Black Widow, Hawkeye.
100%.
I maybe like right before Age of Ultron, maybe like that could have been a nice little spot for it.
I will say in regards to like them struggling with female characters and like the male gaze and all that, like the one like we gotta give props to Marvel TV. Like Marvel TV was just unafraid. Like think about the things they did with Jessica Jones. They just had full on sex scenes, but also was able to be like, this is a character going through trauma. This isn't for like. This isn't just for the gays. This is for like the GAZE gays. This is for like a portrayal of someone experiencing something real. And you look at someone like Agent May when she was like hitting it off with Ward in season 1, and it was all like this cute like love triangle, like sex appeal stuff. Like sometimes they can be really good at it when they're not afraid, right? So like part of it is like I think with Black Widow, it should obviously be up to Scarlett Johansson, and it's like I'm glad that she had power over that character and was able to go, I want to do this, and this is what we're doing. I think that's awesome, and I think it's equally awesome when they're like unafraid to do something because it fits the portrayal of the character. Yeah,
and like it's tough because we like the Marvel fandom right now. I'll be honest, sometimes I despise the Marvel fandom. Like you can't get any female lead or like female prominence thing in Marvel or Star Wars without having a fit. Like She-Hulk, fantastic adaptation of that character, was getting hate before it was even announced. Like that's just how it goes. Like so many of these characters, like I don't want to watch this movie because it's a female. You know that's just kind of the narrative that we've built up into this point. And let's be honest, like I think they're now a little scared to do some of these projects. They're like, well, what if people don't receive it well? Like what if we don't do this? Like I think that probably has heavily affected Avengers 5 and 6 about like what that lineup is going to look like. Like, can we have She-Hulk in that lineup, or will people protest or whatever? Which is sad, but I don't know.
They need to put their best foot forward, which is just doing what they've always done, which is giving fans exactly what they want. And to me, what that looks like today in this year would be all the X-Men women. All the X-women, just them, just get everything you can to the X-Men female characters. That's your bread and butter now. That's what you do. Yeah. That's all it takes. You get Rogue to meet up with Captain Marvel, take her power. And then you get Storm, give her a solo. Storm has the most appearances of any female character in comics, like in superhero comics, other than Betty and Veronica. Like, Storm has the most appearances. Like, she obviously deserves like Wonder Woman levels of like she'd be like the next Trinity, right, of like the MCU. Like, and I think like Daisy Johnson is a character that we need. Like, in terms of like like if we're invoking Black Widow right now, like we have Yelena, fantastic replacement for Black Widow. So like I think that like in terms of like female characters, it's just harder to sell the unknown ones right now. At this stage of the game, it is much harder to sell the unknown, like mid-level, C-level female character right now than it is to just go, okay, here's the X-Men, and the starter lineup is Rogue, Storm, and Psylocke. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Just do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Black Widow and Iron Man 2 represents like them really not having many characters to pull from at the time. So like that's why like when she was introduced at the time, part of it was also, oh yeah, they don't have anybody else in terms of female characters right now. Right. So God bless Iron Man 2 for giving us Iron Man, for giving us Black Widow, and for making her a household name and like starting this. So hats off to them for that, honestly. Like they didn't have any other options. But
I agree. I think also I feel like this is kind of like the first steps into getting like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like I think this movie is so Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. coded, like everything with Black Widow.
The Super Nanny land, when he's like, I'm gonna tase you and watch Super Nanny on the couch. Like that was totally a beginning Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. moment.
Yeah, no, I love like in these movies, like Iron Man 1, this one, Thor, we're gonna get, like, it's really fun getting Coulson I love Coulson. I miss Coulson in the main MCU proper. I'm afraid we're never going to get him again due to like not knowing what's going on with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. unless
he's getting older too, and he's supposed to be playing an immortal android, so
that's a good point. Ages. Yeah, I hope. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where we'd see Coulson at this point, unfortunately. Like, I don't know. Like, it's hard because like if you don't watch S.H.I.E.L.D., you're going to assume that he's dead. So it's like,
I think it's best to like accept that he is a 2010s era character, and he's not moving. Like he was in Lego games, you know, like he was everywhere. Like he, you know what I mean? Like, I think he did the tutorial Lego games. Like it was his voice teaching you to do everything. You know what I mean? Like, and then he's the principal in the Spider-Man animated show. Like he was everywhere. And I can accept that, like, that's just something us 2010s fans are gonna like get to look back on as like this lovely thing about the 2010s era of Marvel. Was like Coulson was kind of like the secret main character, like, of that era, even though he like wasn't in the biggest movies always, you know.
Yeah, I mean, What If could be it, because he's in this final season of a What If. Thankfully, like that might be our final Phil Coulson appearance for a while.
Weird.
At least. Like, yeah, I mean, listen, I still have some faith. Maybe we can get like a Daisy Johnson something at some point. Like that's my hope.
Yeah, I have faith in that. At this point, with all the negativity they've gone through and like the love they've gotten from Daredevil, they have to know now. They have to know now that like their Marvel shows didn't receive as much love as the older ones that were much cheaper and didn't have as much spectacle, didn't have as much money. They have to see that now, and they have to be honest about like, what do fans want? What do they ask us for? Oh yeah, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., this network TV show that like millions of people around the world have seen because it was a network show. Like people don't know how big the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. audience really is. Non-English speaking part of the audience, like that's a massive audience. I don't think people realize. Same with Daredevil. Like people don't talk about Daredevil. Like if you do a poll of top Marvel characters, like Daredevil doesn't win, but like I'm pretty sure. I feel positive about the fact that like the Marvel shows, like many people have seen them. The old ones, I mean, like the both pre-Disney Plus. So I think that it's just a matter of time before they go, okay, we've gotten a lot of hate for stuff, for being like maybe we had a few too many mediocre projects that weren't just total bangers. Let's just give people what they want, because that's what literally made us so successful in the first place.
It's really funny to me, and like I've talked about this a lot on the show, but like they obviously like they had a really good thing going with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Daredevil and like these sets of shows, and they're like, okay, we're gonna do our whole thing on Disney Plus. We're gonna wipe those shows out, do our own thing on Disney Plus.
Which I was positive about.
Yeah, and like those things, they didn't get received as well as they wanted to. They don't know what to do. What do? They bring back Daredevil, and they're bringing back like the like formula of like a series, like a showrunner and a show Bible, and it's like all these things. It's like, but you were already doing that. You just had to transport that formula into a new set of shows. You could have literally just brought in like Agents
all
of
the
Sword,
writers' rooms,
Daredevil back then, a Jessica Jones show, whatever, onto the Disney Plus formula, and you would have been 5 years ahead of the curve. Like, you could have just transitioned them over, and it's like,
and they would have been able to sell the miniseries better if it was like, okay, we're giving you your traditional TV that you've been getting already, and also here are these 6-episode miniseries.
Yeah,
that would have
been
a much better foot to step forward, because now it's always an overcompensation, overreaction with Hollywood, where it's like, now I'm actually afraid we'd be losing something forever. Like, maybe that's not the case. I think we are still getting like 8-episode, 6-episode like miniseries, but it's like, I don't want them to overcompensate in any direction. Like, I want goofy
a variety.
I want miniseries, but I also want these dark, long-form storytelling as well. And I want Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was that crazy show because it could do anything tonally. It could go dark and it could go really goofy, and that's what was really special about it. Like, that's what all I want. Like, I want real diversity here, not just like one type of tone. It's easy to say all they do is comedy, but the reality is that they're not doing enough different stuff. It's the better way to put it.
Right. And I hope, like, I do hope we're on the horizons of kind of changing that. Like, I think in a year like this, where we can have like a Deadpool, which is rated R, an Echo, which is, very similar to that. And then you can have like the Marvels, or you can have a Thor. Like next year I think is going to be a good example of that, where we're going to have Daredevil, which is supposed to be a much darker
I would
show.
love to come back and talk about Daredevil with you after that's wrapped up.
I would 100% love to do that. Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
I don't think I've been as hyped for anything in the MCU before, to be quite honest.
Yeah. I can't believe I still can't believe it's real. Like, we've been waiting so long for that. It's like, oh my god.
And that they caved to just making it all canon.
Yeah. Oh, that night was so special. Like, I didn't think Echo was like the greatest thing ever, but that night, as I am like, I'm about to put it on, and I see the notification on my phone that it's entirely canon. They've added it to like the Disney Plus catalog in the timeline order. I'm like, we've been waiting for this for so many years. Like, it was a dream to come true. I couldn't believe that they were actually doing it. It's crazy.
Because it is that Arrowverse thing where it's like you feel like, oh, we're watching the Light universe. You remember when like apps would come out and it's like you add the version you pay for, and then it's like Angry Birds Light.
Yeah.
And like it always felt like not acknowledging the Marvel shows made it feel like the light, and that was always very disrespectful to me, because they're obviously just really good. They're not perfect. They're not, but the MCU isn't perfect either. So
no,
I think that it's cool that Iron Fist is canon. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's like insane. Like, so I don't know. That's a wonderful thing. We're very lucky that 2024 played out the way that it did.
I agree. With that being said, I mean, do you kind of have any final thoughts or things that we didn't mention about Iron Man 2? I have like 2 more notes
that I didn't say about Iron Man 2.
Yeah, go ahead.
The hologram tech should have came back. We get to see it in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. a little bit, and that's cool, but in general, the hologram tech was cool. They could have brought it in like Endgame one final time for one scene. Because Endgame already had a lot of callbacks, so I understand why like they wouldn't actually need to do that. But in general, like the hologram tech was cool. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. used it pretty well. And the other note that I had was, I'm not really like remembering if Rhodey ever had an AI for his suit. I think he may have had one in Iron Man 3, but that was always weird to me. Like, in this movie, they don't address that. Like, I didn't think about that until I rewatched it recently. Was that like, how much are these suits powered by AI? And I'm also thinking about that in terms of like AI we're dealing with today. Like, people have like AI assistants on their computers now and on their phones. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. Rhodey steals the suit, but like, how is he operating this? Like, is Jarvis like helping him? Like, is Jarvis the one who's helping him? But like, it's something that is obviously they didn't think it through, which is fine. I wanted to make note of that because I don't remember like any prominent like AI companion for Rhodey, and he should get one now moving forward, and they should find like a cool voice to do it, like a Stephen Merchant type of like asshole voice. You know what I mean? Like, I would be down for that. I think he has like a female AI in Iron Man 3. I can't remember though. I genuinely I can't. It's just something that I wrote down because it's something that is probably going to be a thing. I feel like.
They bring in Terrence Howard as like his AI voice in his.
Oh my goodness! Please,
just the funniest thing ever.
Genius.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And did you have a second one, or was that the second one?
Oh, the first one was the hologram thing.
Hologram. Okay, cool. Yeah, no,
Iron Man 2, I'll give 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I think I gave it 3.5 out of my 5 stars on like Letterboxd. So I was like, yeah, I think it's good. I think it's a solid movie. It's not perfect. I will say, and I said the same thing when I rewatched Hulk. Better than I remember. Like I enjoyed it more now than I did when the first couple of times I watched it like years ago. Like I think it does better with time. I think like again like these early MCU movies we kind of we had an opinion set and then we didn't rewatch it and it was like okay now that's just the opinion now. It's like no actually we've got a lot of stuff since then. How does it like relate to some of the newer stuff? Is it better or is it worse? And I think it got better for me. So
this was the last one where they had a real suit too. I think for Tony.
Oh really?
Like set.
Sure.
And we get a lot of iconography in this one too, like the suitcase suit up.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much good stuff.
Yeah, I do like just like some of these early movies, and this isn't the hate on modern MCU, but like some of it does just look so much more real in like some of these Phase 1 stuff.
Even the robot fight that doesn't look real in the Japanese garden, it still looks visually fantastic.
I'll say that, yeah, I actually really, really love that final fight with like Tony and Rhodey together, like back to back fighting all the drones and stuff like that. Like I feel like it feels so personal. And again, going back to like the Rhodey thing, it was like I wish their dynamic could have been slightly stronger in like the first act of the movie, first couple acts, because that moment's really cool because it feels like two brothers who have like gone through this thing throughout the movie and they're coming together at the end, working together to beat this thing. Like it's a really cool moment.
That's why I love these deleted scenes with you, because that moment where he's like, "Hey, you ambushed me at this courtroom hearing." He's like, "Hey, I don't think hanging out with you is good for our friendship." Like they're having this like they're struggling, you know, and it would have made the moment in their fight the impact of that fight like work a little bit better. I think.
I agree.
It's weird that we can see that. It's weird that we can literally see these scenes and like chart like a different movie in our head. And in my like wisdom of enjoying these films, I make my own headcanon. To me, those scenes happen, and I don't care what anyone says. Like that's how I experience these films. Like I choose from deleted scenes what I perceive as canon. Not all of them can be canon. Sure. Like Pepper throwing the helmet out of the plane. As much as I love the scene, and you should watch that scene. Tony can't fly without a helmet at night. There's no way that works. Yeah, how does he see? But you know what I mean? Like that's my headcanon. I think Rhodey and Tony, that scene was a really good one on the plane.
I agree. But yeah, with that being said, I do think that takes us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for being here. This was an absolute blast.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Iron Man 2 is the funniest one that I could have been here for, because I remember you said like MCU retrospective, and I was like, there was a moment where I think you hadn't said which movie it was yet, and I was like pinging, like my brain was pinging across the entire MCU. I was like, what's it gonna be? Like, there was a moment of like, oh, Iron Man 2, oh, Iron Man 2, and then I was like, oh, Iron Man 2, and I was like, let's do this.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I mean, do you have anything that you would like to shout out, promo, like where can people find you, kind of thing?
I mean, you know, just have me back on. I'd love to be back on. I'm looking to start a little Twitch stream where I just play Spider-Man and Red Dead Online and Star Citizen, but I'm still working on that with equipment. But that's for the future.
Amazing. Well, go follow them over on Twitter. Go make sure to check that out. They post some things about their favorite
I also have a Blue Sky now.
Blue Sky, everyone's making that turn. I don't blame you. I'm over there, but we
met on Twitter, so it feels weird that if I ever delete my Twitter, but I am considering deleting it.
Okay, good to know.
And I'm the same name, Bedeviled Dinosaur on Blue Sky. No space.
Amazing. In terms of my thing, Darren After Credits will be this Tuesday, so we'll be doing Creature Commandos and Skeleton Crew like always. And then next, I don't know if it'll be next Thursday or Friday, will be our Christmas episode. Can't believe it's that time of year already. It's crazy. We're less than 2 weeks away at this point, which is crazy. So yeah, stay tuned for all that stuff, and I will see you guys on the flip side. Bye bye.